Bruchim Haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Tes Vav Amid Aleph, a little bit more than a quarter way down from the top of the Amud. The Mishnah states that the Kohen Gadol prior to Yom Kippurim is separated and he's put in the Lishkas HaPalhedrin, whereby he does certain avodos preparing for the Yom Kippurim. One of those avodos is first mentioned in the Mishnah as being maktir the Ketores, and then afterwards hatovas haneros. However, the Gemara asks, but the Mishnayos later on point that when we draw lots, so the second lot includes the avodah of hatovas haneros, and the third lot includes the avodah of being maktir the Ketores, the opposite order. Abaye offers one reconciliation of this contradiction. One, he suggests, is that the Mishnah, since it's talking about the Haktaras, it's talking about before the latter two Hatovas Haneros. In other words, when it comes to the Hatovas Haneros, there's a hefsek in the middle. There's the first 5 that's prepared, and then only there's a hefsek, and then another 2 prepared. So since the Haktaras is what is being mafsik, according to Artana, therefore it's speaking about in regards to the Haktaras before the latter 2 of the Neros being prepared. Whereas the Mishnayos Lekamon is talking about in respect to the first 5. The first 5 Neros are taken care of in the second drawing of the lots, whereas the third Garal, that's dealing with the Haktara of the Ktaris. So it depends on the respect. In which respect are we talking about the Haktaris? Is it talking about in respect to the 5 or the 2? So once again, Abai is saying that it's referring to in our Mishnah before the latter 2, whereas the Mishnayos Lekamon is talking about after the first 5 are prepared. Now our Gemara brings Rav Papa as a different understanding to reconcile this, what seems to be a contradiction. Rav Papa Amar Lo Kashya is not a difficulty because Harabbanon Ha'abashol. Our Mishnah is talking about where the hefsek is that it's the Ketores in between the 5 and the 2 Neros. That's according to the Rabbanon Shita. However, Rabbi Shol doesn't learn that way. He learns that the hefsek is really the avodas of the damim of the korban tamid, whereby he learns that indeed the Ketores is done after the Hatovas Haneros, even after the latter 2. B'mai ikimto lemasnisin dehocha kirabonon payis kabashol. Ask the Gemara, how can you go ahead and make such a reconciliation by saying our Mishnah is talking about the Rabbanon, and the later on Mishnahs of the Payis is referring to Abashol Shita. Ema Seifa, look at the Seifa that states Heviu loy es hatamid. They bring the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippurim, the Korban Tamid. Krotzoi umerek acher shchita al yadoi. He then severs the majority of the simonim by shechting the carbon. Then gives it the other Kohen another Kohen to complete the shchita, so that the Kohen Gadol can do then the kabbalas hadam, since all of the avodah has to be done by the Kohen Gadol. Then it goes on to say in the Mishnah, nichnas lahaktir es haktares ulehetiv es haneros, and it says in this order that the ktaris is first burnt, and then the preparation of the neros. So that is ason rabban. That goes back according to the shita of the rabbanon. So Gemara points out this is difficult. Reisha v'seifa rabbanon. Our Mishnah and the Mishnah later on in the Seifa is the rabbanon. Umitzios abashol, and the one in between in regards to the pious is abashol. That's very difficult. Like Rashi points out, take a look at Rashi in Dibra Hamaschil, Reisha v'seifa. It's almost parallel to our Gemara. The Seder Yoma, Sema Yoma rabbanon v'chulei. Bitmiya asks Rashi, explain the Gemara, the kol Masechet zu k'mishnah achas. The entire Masechet of Yoma is really one long Mishnah. She'asuka kula b'seder k'moy shehein hapsukin sedurin v'holchin. Really, the Seder of our Gemara is like the Seder of the Psukim. So it's difficult to say there's 2 different Tanoim. Omar loch Rapapa. Rapapa will say though, however, in Reisha v'Sefer Rabbanim Mitziyasa Abashol. Indeed, it is so. The first and the latter Mishnayos are indeed the Rabban, whereas the middle one is authored by Abashol. So Gemara now asks, Bishlama Abaye Lemar Rapapa. We understand why Abaye did not choose to answer like Rapapa did because of this difficulty. Reisha v'Sefer Rabbanim Mitziyasa Reisha v'Sefer Rabbanim Mitziyasa Abashol. Lo mukim lo. That's why he doesn't want to learn like Rav Papa. But why not the opposite? El Rav Papa, my time lo omak Abaye. Why doesn't Rav Papa choose to reconcile these Mishnayos like Abaye? Omar loch. Rav Papa will answer you. The reason why I didn't want to explain it like Abaye and say it depends in which respect to the Hatovas Haneres we're talking about. In our Mishnah, we're talking about the Haktaras before the last two. The Mishnah is later on by the Pais is talking about the Haktaras after the first five. So he says that's difficult. Why? Because Tana Bereisha Hatavas Shtei Neiros. Our Mishnah is talking about the Hatava of 2 Neiros. V'hoda Hatavas Chamesh Neiros. Then the Pais, which is a Mishnah later on, is talking about the Hatava of 5 Neiros. That's out of order. We know that the first 5 are prepared, and then there's a hefsek, and then another 2 are prepared. So why would you then teach it out of order? But Rabbi would say it's not difficult. Why? Because Erue Ma'alma Hu de Kamari. In other words, our Mishnah really is talking about the Kohen Gadol the week before Yom Kippurim, the various avodas that he's doing. So it's not meduyak on the Seder Hayoim. It's just talking about the different avodas that he's doing. So therefore it says that he's makdir, and then he does hatavas haneros. So it's not difficult to say that's talking about he's makdir, and then does the last 2 of the Haktaras haneros. However, over there, in regards to the pious, that's talking about the Seder Hayoim itself. V'sidro hadar tanile. So it's not difficult to then explain it in this way. Now the Gemara goes back to the statement that he had earlier in regards to the Korban Tamid. Gufa, Baloy lekeren mizrachis tzvoinis, noisein mizrachis tzvoinis. It's talking about when he does the avodah in terms of the blood applications on the mizbeach. So in the Korban Tamid, he goes and starts by the north eastern corner of the mizbeach, and he makes an application. As he does, it's going to be an application of really 2, that if one application really becomes 2, because he applies it to the corner, and as he applies it to the corner, so then part of it goes on one side of the mizbeach, because it goes on the other side. One goes on the north, one goes on the east. So it's one application that really is 2. Maravis droimis, noisim maravis droimis. Then he walks around to the southwestern corner, and he does the same thing. He then sprinkles the blood on the lower part of that corner, and again it hits both sides, both the west and the south. So that's the classical way the Korban Oila is brought, when it sprinkles the blood on a Korban Oila. And that is described here as what's being done by the Korban Tamid, which is an Oila. Betani Allah, but it was taught in regards to this, a brisa was taught in regards to this Mishnah of Tamid. Rabbi Shimon Ish HaMitzpah Meshane B'Tamid. He changed the way the Korban Tamid is. He didn't make it like a classical oila, but rather he did the following. He did the first part as the same as the Korban oila. He went on the northeastern corner, and he sprinkled the blood on the lower part, which was hitting on both sides. However, Ma'aravis droimis, when he walked around to get to the southwestern side, noisin Ma'arava, he placed the blood on the west wall, v'acharkach noisin droma, and afterwards on the south wall, which is done like a chatos. My time of the Rabbi Shimon Ish HaMitzvah. What's the reason why he did this like this? After all, we're talking about a Korban Tamid. Omar Rabbi, and with Korban Tamid is a Korban Oila. Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Chad the Rabbi Yonai. Rabbi Yochanan said the name of one of the Talmidim in the Beis HaMedrash Rabbi Yonai. Omar Kro, the pasuk states in regards to the Korban, V'si'ir izim echol lechatos la Hashem al oilas hatomid ye'aseh v'niska. In regards to the monthly Korban Chatos, it states that a he-goat will be a chatos la Hashem, and it adds these words that are seemingly superfluous. Al oilas hatamid yasav niskoi. Why does that word add the words al oilas hatamid on the oilas hatamid? The Gemara learns oilahu va'omar achmona avid ba ma'aseh chatos. It's an oila. We know that the tamid is an oila. Why does it say oilas tamid? To tell you that the korban chatos should be upon. It should be upon the tamid. There's an aspect of the chatas should be upon the tamid. Haketzad, how is that going to be so? That the chatas will have an aspect that will be upon the tamid. In what regard? Noisin achas shehi shtaim kemaisa oila. The first part will be exactly like a maisa oila. He'll then make an application on the corner, again the northeastern corner, which will be then sprinkling on that corner, which would hit both sides. Shtayim shehin shtayim. But when he goes to then walk around to the southwest side, then he does two separate applications like a korban chatos. Ask the Gemara, the Gemara asks, let him put two, that is like four, like an oila. In other words, do a complete oila service by doing that on the northeastern and then again on the southwestern, that he should hit both sides when he hits it in the corner. Right? And then do a complete chatos, that you should do two separate applications on each corner. So there'll be a total of 4 applications. The Gemara answers because lo matzinu domim shemechaprim v'choizim mechaprim. We don't find that you first put domim, one application, and then a second application on top of it. It's superfluous. The first application will make the kapara, the second one will not make a kapara. Ask the Gemara, v'chimatzinu domim shechatzoin chat v'chatzoin. But still, did we ever find something like this? That you'll find an application of korban oila and also an application of korban chatos in the same korban? Elo al korchach hekeshin hakosu. Rather, we learn it out from a hekesh. Right? We just learned before that the chatos is going to be upon the oila. So hachanami bal korchach hakeshin hakosu. So to now over here, you can say the same thing and say that it's a hekesh, whereby it's a mechudesh dikadin, whereby we can apply the damim and the damim again. First the damim of a korban oila, and then the damim like a korban chatos. Answers the Gemara going hasam pisuk matonas ba'almahi. There it's merely a separating of the applications, and therefore it's indeed they're two. They're really going on two sides of the mizbeach, two walls, but it's a difference just in splitting the application. But it's the same idea, and therefore the Gemara leaves it as that's not a possibility then to do both. In other words, the hekesh is teaching me just the same idea. When you apply the chatos, it's just going to do it in 2 separate applications, but it's going to be on the same walls. So then we know when it comes to the Maisa Oila, why don't we do it downwards, which is normally how the blood is sprinkled, and then do 2 applications that are going to be on the upper part of the Mizbeach, which is how the korban chatos is normally applied. The Gemara says, "Lo matzinu dam shechetzin lamal v'chetzin lamal." We don't find a application where half is below and half is above. Ask the Gemara, "V'loi v'hatnan." We have a precedent. It says, "Hize mimenu achas lamal v'sheva lamato." It says by the Yom Kippurim service itself that he is mazeh, the Kohen Gadol. He sprinkles 1 above and 7 below. So you see, it's 1 above, mashma above on the upper part of the mizbeach, and 7 below on the lower part of the mizbeach. Gemara answers kimatzlif. No, it doesn't mean that it's going to be the upper or the lower part of the mizbeach, but rather he does a kimatzlif. Ask the Gemara, my kimatzlif. What's meant by kimatzlif? Machle Rav Yehuda kimenag deno. He says it's like somebody who is giving whips. In other words, just like the Shlich Bezdin gives whips, he whips on the top part of the shoulders, and then he slowly goes down. Different places on the back of the person who deserves lashes. So too, these applications are going to be not in terms of referring to upper or lower part of the Mizbeach. They'll all be in the same area, but it's going to be a little bit lower each time. So therefore, it comes closer and closer to him. In fact, he first does it in application with the hand facing upwards, and then that's 1, and then 7, closer, 7 times, he points downwards. Ask the Gemara, Veloi, we don't have a different precedent that indeed sometimes we do upper part of Mizbech and sometimes we do lower part of Mizbech in the same type of applications. V'hatnan, it says in the Mishnah, Hize mimenu al taroi shel Mizbech sheva pamim. He is mazeh, he sprinkles from it on the taharoi of the Mizbeach 7 times. Here it's talking about the golden Mizbeach, that he puts applications of 7 times on the taroi. And what does the word taro mean? My lav apalgid the Mizbeach. Is it not referring to the middle of the Mizbeach? Kidamriya inshi. Like we have a statement that people make, tahar tiharo. That means that the purity of the day, it becomes pure. Hu palgadiyam, which refers to the middle of the day. So here too, we're talking about in the middle of the Mizbeach, he makes the applications, some above and some below. So we have a precedent. And so the Gemara, no, that's not the kavanah over here. Omar Rabbi Bar Shilo Loi. Here, in regards to the golden Mizbech, when he then makes the applications, it's referring to on top of Tes Vav Amid Beis, Agufe de Mizbech, on the roof of the Mizbech itself. In other words, it's on the top part where you then remove the ashes from the Ketares. That's where he made the applications of the Dam, in the middle of that Gag. The Chsiv, it says, Uke'etzem HaShamayim L'Toyar. We have a present, the word Toyar. There it says in the Pasuk that they had a certain vision by Har Sinai. And it says over there, like the appearance of the Shamayim Latoihar. So Latoihar over here doesn't mean purity, it means clarity. Just like over here, where clarity will take away the ashes that are on the Mizbeach from the Ketares, in order to then clear it up, so that we can apply the Dam on the roof of the Mizbeach. As we see over there too, the word Toyar refers to clarity. So that we do not have a precedent that the application of the Dam could be on the higher part or the lower part of the Mizbeach.